Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020 or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. The Rays get their 36th comeback victory of the year and now hold a 5-game division lead in the American League East over the Boston Red Sox. It is a good evening to you, and how you be. William Haynes here. You are there at 11:02 on this Tuesday night. This Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show is live from the WHBC studio in Clearwater, Florida. An 8-4 win over the Red Sox in Fenway Park tonight. The Rays taking an early 4-1 deficit after a 3-run homer from former Ray Hunter Renfroe. And it looked like things may be going out of hand a little bit and that the Red Sox would be on their way to taking the first game of this series. But instead, the Rays come back a little bit in the 6th. They tie it with a 2 RBI pinch hit double for Ji-Man Choi, who later left the game with a knee issue, I guess hustling over to second base. And then the Rays get the bases loaded in the 9th. And what was ultimately scored a single and no RBIs in my score, but guys still have a bases clearing 3 RBI triple for Francisco Mejia, who I think has actually been a pretty clutch hitter this year. So another game where the Rays score 8 runs. It seems like this stretch that the team is on as far as the pitching and defense is concerned tonight, more so the pitching, that they need these kind of runs in order to be winning ball games. And this is now the Rays' 5th victory in a row, and they are now a season-high watermark 25 games over 500, as they are now 69-44. They're also 34-22 on the road, which is still the best road record in Major League Baseball. And again, with the 8 runs scored and all those things, also the Rays now lead this season series with the Red Sox 6-4. And they take the first game of this series in Beantown, and they'll have a chance tomorrow to take the series. And then if not, there's a Thursday afternoon game as well. We'll talk about it a little bit later because we have the post-game stuff really to take care of first. But really, as you know, Randy Arozarena was reinstated off the COVID IL before today's game, and he hit in the leadoff spot and had a couple of hits, one of which was a double, worked a walk in there as well. So a very nice first game back for Randy Arozarena. But as one guy comes off the COVID IL, another guy heads to the COVID IL. And I, of course, am talking about starting pitcher Ryan Yarbrough, who I believe was scheduled to pitch Thursday's game. So obviously he gets scratched, and the Rays, in a way, are a bit scrambling to find a starter. It looks like Josh Fleming will pitch tomorrow, either starting outright or behind an opener. And as I suspected, it's always nice when I can be vindicated for my predictions. Drew Rasmussen will be getting the start for the Rays on that Thursday late afternoon contest to close out the series in Boston. And with him throwing about 55 pitches his last time out, he will be on 5 days rest. So I imagine 60, 65, maybe 70 pitches if they're really trying to stretch it, which I would gander to guess maybe 3 or 4 innings for him, as it looks like they are stretching him out to join the starting rotation. After Sunday's game in Baltimore, you would think maybe replacing Michael Wacha, but for now, Drew Rasmussen will be taking Ryan Yarbrough's place in the rotation. And of course, if Yarbrough does have an issue, or he does test positive, he's got to be out for 10 days. Then Yarbrough would miss a couple of turns through the rotation and those things. So that would obviously not be ideal, and we're going to keep our eyes on that situation. But we have to keep our eyes on what's in front of us, and that is tonight's 8-4 win. And again, a very impressive comeback victory for the boys here tonight, especially against a division rival that you're trying to keep off your heels, all that stuff. It's all good. So with that being said, we are going to take a short break. When we return, we will continue our discussion of tonight's Rays win. Want to let you know that you can call the show and be a part of the program. The number to call is 877-566-1020 if you want to call in and talk about Rays, tonight's game, whatever. You can also tweet us at WHBC Official. Just drop us a line on there and share your thoughts. We'll read it on the air. So all that good stuff. So with that being said, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Rays postgame on the William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBC Official. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
HBC. And at 11:08 on this Tuesday night, we return to our Rays post-game coverage on this William Haynes Show. Again, number to call, 877-566-1020. You can also tweet us at WHBC Official. But without further ado, in 3 hours and 28 minutes and in front of a paid attendance of 28,356, it was the Tampa Bay Rays 8-4 over the Boston Red Sox. The Rays improved to a season-high watermark 25 games above 500. They are now 69-44. They also have the best road record in the majors at 34-22. And also worth noting, they have added on to their major league leading comeback victories, and they notched their 36th one of those here tonight, and they also hold a 5-game division lead now over the Red Sox, who with tonight's loss are now 15 games above 500 at 65-50, and they are now 33-23 within the friendly confines of Fenway Park. For the victorious Rays, it was 8 runs on 11 hits, no errors, so they continue their offensive ways, getting double-digit hits and well into the high run totals with the 8 here tonight. And for the Red Sox, it was 4 runs on 9 hits and an error defensively for them. And the way that was being scored, I can't really argue with it. That was that Hunter Renfroe play in the 9th inning with the bases loaded, and at the time it was 2 out. So it was do or die time for the Rays. And again, as I said in the open, I have it scored as a bases clearing 3 RBI double, but instead the official score called it a single. Basically, it was against the Red Sox closer, the righty Matt Barnes. That means it would have been Mejia in the left-handed batter's box, and he got a hanging curveball really kind of up in the zone, and he just smacks it, pulls it to the right side, and it took a kind of a nasty hop off what Brian Anderson described as a chewed up warning track there. Along the foul territory down the right field line, and so what could have been a single falling right into the lap of Renfroe, and obviously with 2 outs scores probably 2 runs. And instead, it just kind of gets by. Mejia ends up at second base, and as I said, the bases do clear, and that gave the Rays the 7-4 lead, which they held for good. And Brandon Lau also notched an RBI single for good measure to put the Rays within a grand slam's distance from the Red Sox. The pitcher decisions collecting another win. Andrew Kittredge is now 8-1 this season for the Tampa Bay Rays, and I think you could make a really solid argument that Andrew Kittredge could be the MVP this season for the Rays. In 2 innings of shutout work, he struck out 5. 5 of his 6 outs were via the strikeout, and as I look at the scorebook, they were all by the swinging variety, so really nasty stuff that he brought to Boston tonight. No walks, and he's now got his ERA at 133, so has been really shut out. And if you want another just number to kind of blow your mind, 29 pitches, 26 were for strikes, and he was 9 for 9 in establishing the first pitch strike. So anytime you're able to do that, especially for multiple innings out of the bullpen, especially in a tie game, especially against a division rival in a pennant race, that's about as clutch as it gets. And collecting another loss for the Boston Red Sox, their closer Matt Barnes, who is now 6-5 on the season, he collected a couple of outs in the 9th inning, but ultimately ended up giving up those 4 runs that gave the Rays the lead as they break out of the tie. 2 strikeouts and 2 walks in the process as well. We talked about the Red Sox bullpen struggling in Toronto last weekend with an ERA over on the wrong side of 5 for the entire pen as a unit, and Matt Barnes picking up a couple of losses in Toronto that weekend as well. So not just the offense slumping for Boston heading into this series, but really their pitching as well. And I think you would say that was no different tonight when your closer basically straight up loses the game, blows the game for you. Anytime you bring your closer into a tie game like that, you're not even guaranteeing yourself a win, but you assume that it's automatic that you'll be heading to the bottom of the 9th in a tie game. And with the way Matt Barnes has been pitching as of late, that was just not the case, and the 2 walks is really what did him in. The Rays as a team walked 7 times, and with 8 runs, that 7 walk total is certainly something that you would point to. It was something that was driving their offense the entire weekend in Baltimore, and we talked about some of their offensive numbers last night. They are 4th in the majors in total runs scored with now 578. They have a bottom 10 batting average, but they lead baseball in walks with now 423, which is good for 2nd in the American League, 6th overall in the majors, and they've got about a 320 on base percentage. So not just lately, but really all season. That's something that's been driving the offense. So the starting lineup for Kevin Cash, and they did a lot of maneuvering. I believe they emptied the bench, if I'm not mistaken, but the starting lineup, defense first, in the outfield from left to right. In left field, it was Austin Meadows, Manuel Margot in center, and Randy Arozarena in right. And then in the infield, from third to first, it was Yandy at third, Wander Franco at shortstop. Brandon Lau got the nod at second base against the lefty. It was Jordan Luplow getting his first career start at first base. Mike Zunino was the catcher, and the designated hitter was Nelson Cruz. So I think against a left-handed starter, and it was Eduardo Rodriguez going for the Sox tonight, that's about as good as a lineup that you can put together. We've talked about how the Rays are bottom 5 in pretty much all offensive statistical categories against left-handed pitching as a whole, and starters especially. But a lot of those games exist in a world without Wander Franco playing at the level that he is right now, and without Nelson Cruz being in a Rays uniform. So you get both of those guys that hit from the right side against lefties, and how. And I think that's part of the reason why they've been able to flip the script. But also the righties have been better against left-handed pitching, and also Brandon Lau has really turned his season around, not just against left-handed pitching, but overall. But he was absolutely anemic. I mean, batting under 100 against left-handed pitching, I think all the way into maybe June or early July. And now it seems like he's got things back to normal. By the way, if you're curious, Brandon Lau, he's now batting .227 on the year. You would say certainly as clutch as Francisco Mejia's hit was with the bases loaded 2 out in the ninth, and that really is hard to disregard. But I think you would say Brandon Lau, the MVP of tonight's game, as he goes 3 for 4 with a couple of runs knocked in and a walk. And Lau notching his team-leading 25th home run. And Brandon Lau earlier this season had literally been quoted saying that this is the worst season of his baseball life, and he's set for maybe between 30 and 35 home runs by season's end. He's going to have a bunch of runs knocked in, and maybe get his average up to maybe 230, 240. Who knows by the time October 3rd comes to a close? But we'll just enjoy watching the ride right now with what Brandon Lau has been able to do as of late. And we talked about the importance of Randy Arozarena being reinstated off the COVID IL. I know this was talked about during the game, but just a wild story for Arozarena. He was, last Thursday heading into the Orioles series, he was placed on the COVID IL with what they could only call at that time a close contact. Well, I know we all kind of assumed that was someone with the Rays. It ended up being his wife and his daughter were had both tested positive for COVID. Somehow Arozarena was testing negative throughout. So a guy that had COVID, I think in July or June or July of 2020. I want to say it was July. So I guess was able to avoid getting the reinfection, and thankfully that was the case. So he was able to rejoin the team after just missing 3 games. And another just personal note for him, his wife was 8 months pregnant and had tested positive, so she had to be hospitalized, and there was just stuff going on with that. So you can imagine everything that's going on in Randy Arozarena's mind right now, and he was able to go 2 for 4 with a walk out of the leadoff spot with his average all the way up to 271. So he is definitely on the right track right now. I know we were all kind of upset that the circumstance had to be that he had to miss the Baltimore series, because he has obliterated Orioles pitching this year and going to continue to pad those stats. But I think is continuing to have a really nice encore season after that incredible postseason he had a year ago. And so outside of that, those are really the key performers. You have Randy in the leadoff spot getting it done. He also opened the game with a hit. Lau, who we talked about, who also had a home run earlier in the game and had a double, a walk in the 8th where they were able to load the bases and get nothing out of it, and then had an RBI single to extend the lead to 8-4. But then outside of that, of course, just key characters getting the job done along the way. Francisco Mejia, of course, who was not in the starting lineup. He came in as a defensive replacement at the catcher position after they pinch hit for Zunino. And so he ultimately gets the game-winning hit. No RBIs. They've got to change that, I personally believe, but we'll see. Ji-Man Choi with that pinch hit, 2 RBI double in the 7th. That was able to tie the game at 4, so that got the Rays back in it. And an interesting note on Twitter from Doug Kern, who used to, I guess, work for ESPN Stats, and I guess he's just a baseball fan in general now, but he had a note that said, Ji-Man Choi also had a game-tying pinch hit double in the 7th or later, which was in the 10th inning of a September 6th game last year against the Marlins, which ended up being the first player in Rays history to have 2 such hits. to have a pinch hit double that tied the game, in the 7th or later. So Ji-Man Choi has been terrific. I know he heading into that pinch hit appearance was 5 for 6 with 4 knocked in and 2 walks. So now he's 6 for 7 with 6 RBIs, and he's also got 2 walks. So maybe, I don't know, this could be hyperbole, but one of the greatest pinch hit seasons, at least in Rays history. I would feel comfortable saying that. I mean, has been just as close to automatic as you can get, 6 for 7, and as I said, the couple of walks mixed in there as well. So pretty impressive. And also the note from Doug Kern, he dropped one about Brandon Lau. He is the first Rays batter with a home run, double, and single at Fenway since, Brandon Lau did it 363 days ago, which was a 9-5 win for the Rays. The only other Ray to do it twice in Fenway is Evan Longoria, so I guess the only 2 players to be a triple short of the cycle twice. But a testament to Brandon Lau's dominance certainly tonight, and that he's done it before. He did it almost to the day a year ago. And the way that the batting lineup was structured, it was Arozarena leading off, followed by Cruz and Franco. You had Diaz, Meadows, Luplow, and then the bottom 3 of Margot, Lau, and Zunino. And Lau being in the 8th spot and contributing like he did, I think, especially as a testament to 1 through 9, how tough they are as a lineup, no matter what day it is, no matter who they've got in the lineup. If you can get men on base in front of anyone, there's a good chance, at least the way they're playing right now, that you're going to be able to drive them in. So that's always a good sign. Guys that did not have such great games, Austin Meadows was putting the ball in the air his first 3 times. He ends up going 0 for 4 with a walk. So when it counted most, really, I guess he got it done. But there was a spot where the Rays had first and second, and 2 outs and a tie game in the 6th. They were down 4-2 at that time, so they had the tying run on base, and he flew out. So in a clutch situation there, he was just putting the ball in the air with not much authority, and then did strike out with a man on first and nobody out in the 8th. But he did work that walk that did load the bases in the 9th with 2 outs. So not the guy getting done himself, but all you can really do in that situation, I guess, is pass the baton to the next man. And that certainly is what Meadows was able to accomplish. Luplow had a pretty bad game, I thought, was 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts, and just was struggling really. In all 3 of those at-bats, got pinch hit for by got just replaced in the lineup, not really a pinch hit. They were just moving things around. Francisco Mejia took his spot in the order, and Mejia actually struck out in his first at-bat with a runner at first and 1 out, and was just kind of swinging around some pitches from, I want to say it was Sawamura, the right-hander for Boston. And so to be able to come back around in the 9th inning and do what he did was really impressive. And Mejia, not really a guy that you think of as an incredibly clutch hitter, but I think he's batting like somewhere like 350 in his career with the bases loaded. He's got a couple of grand slams, including one this season. So a guy that doesn't really play every day either. I mean, he is what you would consider very much a backup catcher with the all-star season that Mike Zunino has had this year. So whenever he's called upon, it seems like he is able to contribute. He's hitting .264 this year, and that he's a switch hitter and can hit from both sides of the plate, I think is just another card in the deck that Kevin Cash is able to use to his advantage as far as late game maneuverings. And I know with the Rays adding on to their totals, which is now they had 215 runs in the 7th inning or later heading into tonight, and with 6 runs in the 7th inning or later, so 6 of their 8 runs came in the final third of the game. That now improves their total to 221 runs the Rays have scored in the 7th inning or later. And I think a lot of that, I was thinking about it just during the game today, the way Kevin Cash sets the lineup is not as much what you do traditionally, which is to get the best advantage against that night's starter. I think really what he does is he makes it so difficult to line up the bullpen against them, and really using that 3-batter minimum to his advantage, which I know a lot of Rays fans, myself included, was mad about that rule when it was implemented. But in Rays fashion, they found a way to actually turn the rule in their favor. You have, for example, tonight, the left-handed pitcher Josh Taylor, who is as much of a lefty specialist as you're going to get. I think left-handers are batting like 130 against him this year, and right-handers I think are batting like over 300. So the definition of guy that you want to only face lefties. But the way that Cash will set the lineup, it'll be, you'll have a left-hander maybe, but then a right-hander to follow, and then maybe a switch hitter. So, and with all the switch hitters that they have at their disposal right now, just a couple that they would utilize in kind of an everyday game situation being Franco and Mejia. That's just, again, another thing that just makes it impossible to match up against. So I know the Rays have struggled against starting pitchers. That's been an issue throughout, and for most of the night was the case against Eduardo Rodriguez, who allowed just 2 runs over 5 1/3 and was really kind of working out of trouble there at the end and was able to do it successfully. But if the pitching can keep the Rays in the game in the late stages, it seems like no matter who they're facing, whether it's Baltimore, it could be Boston, it could be the Yankees, really anyone, the Blue Jays, I know they did that a ton this year, the Cleveland, whoever. I know in Atlanta, out of the All-Star break, that was pretty much that entire series coming back against the bullpen. If you can keep it close, you feel good about your chances, really, no matter who you're playing. And Red Sox bullpen right now that looks like they are on fire, and in the worst possible way. I don't mean that in the good way. I mean more like in the dumpster fire variety. They are really falling apart in front of our eyes. And for Rays fans, obviously you would say that that's a good thing. So not really going to go one by one through the lineup because we already kind of discussed everybody. Franco did have a hit and a walk in his Fenway debut, which I thought was really cool. He had an RBI double in the 6th that made it 4-2 Boston. So cutting into that Red Sox lead and allowed or basically set the scene for the 7th, where Choi was able to tie the game with a double because of that RBI single that Franco had just the inning before. And working a walk in there as well. And that was also in the 9th inning. They were in a tie game. Rosa ran a double to lead off the inning. Cruz strikes out, and he had a pretty bad game, you would say. So 2 games in a row that he's kind of been off his game. But Wander Franco, in a very patient and unlike a 20-year-old, just worked an incredible at-bat and was able to work the walk against Barnes to make it 1st and 2nd. With 1 out, in a tie game in the 9th, you don't really need more base runners, but it wasn't an out, and as I said before, passing the baton to the next guy. So, like most of the players in the lineup tonight, they did their damage when it was needed most in the late stages. And again, what else is new really for the Rays? Yandy Diaz 1 for 5 with 3 strikeouts. I didn't think he had a great game. I want to say the at bat in the 4th. Looked like he maybe messed something up in his shoulder. The trainer came out, Cash came out to look at him, and they were probably out there for 2 or 3 minutes, it seemed like. And usually in that circumstance, the guy comes out of the game. Diaz stays in the game, and he looked like he was fighting through pain on some pretty heavy swings later in the at bat, where he ultimately struck out and stayed in the game the rest of the way. I was a bit surprised to see that. Had a nice defensive play made as well, where he made a diving grab to get a hard hit ground ball, and then basically from his knees through a 2-hopper, bouncing off the infield dirt at Fenway Park to Jordan Luplow, who had made his first career start at first base. And Yandy Diaz also, he did strike out in the 9th with 1st and 2nd and 1 out, which put the do or die pressure on Francisco Mejia. And that's about it, really. Zunino 1 for 2, and he had a double that set the scene for that game-tying double pinch hit that followed for Choi. And then he, as obviously, or that wasn't in the same inning. That was actually in the inning prior. Zunino hit a double in the 6th to lead off the inning and was driven in by Franco that made it 4-2. And then in the 7th with second and third and 1 out. Zunino gets or Choi pinch hits for Zunino. And so that's where they have Mejia at catcher and the late game maneuverings that come with that. And then also it was Kevin Kiermaier who played for the first time since injuring his knee on Saturday and did not play on Sunday, obviously. And with the off day yesterday, they didn't really think it was going to be much of an issue. It was listed as right knee soreness, and he was just day-to-day, no injured list stint. And so the fact that he came in an 8-4 lead in the ninth leads you to believe that he's healthy and he's fine. So he could be in the starting lineup maybe as early as tomorrow. It'll be the right-hander Nathan Eovaldi. So you'd imagine there's a pretty decent chance Kiermaier will be in the starting lineup. So I think that we've pretty much covered everything from the lineup. They get 11 hits, as we talked about. 7 walks was huge. They do strike out 14 times, but they do lead baseball in strikeouts. But when you're top 5 in runs, that I guess comes with the territory in today's game. But the 7 walks was huge. They go 4 for 13 with runners in scoring position, which I guess doesn't seem that well, but that's a .307 average. And the Rays continuing the trend of they bat .280 with runners in scoring position in their 69 wins, and they bat about .160 with runners in scoring position in their 44 losses. So that's always the kind of the greatest indicator to see where the game goes. And they did not have a ton of chances early on against Eduardo Rodriguez, a guy that was just kind of painting 92-mile-an-hour fastballs on the corners and was working a good changeup. If the Rays lost, certainly I would have been doing some more belly aching about home plate umpire Joe West, who did not give any pitches to the Rays starter Luis Patino, but it seemed like Eduardo Rodriguez was getting every call in the corner, and it was the same for the Red Sox bullpen up until maybe about the 8th inning, where the Rays loaded the bases then, and then they did it again in the 9th, and a big part of both of those innings that they had was because of walks that they were able to work. So thankfully we don't have to complain about umpiring because I don't know, that just always seems like a cheap thing to talk about when you lose, but no doubt that it impacted the game. And I don't want to go off on a Joe West tangent, but in his career, and he's now umpired more games than any umpire in MLB history, it seems like he enjoys the spotlight. Which is not what you want an umpire to be. I think he kind of likes being a part of the game, which, like I said, again, is never what you want. That's not the point of them being there. But Joe West, a guy that's got 2 country albums released, I never would have guessed that. But honestly, learning that tonight doesn't surprise me too much. Like I said, was certainly impacting the game and for the Rays in a negative way, and thankfully they were able to overcome it. They were able to stay steadfast and keeping their batting eye, not getting too crazy. I know, for an example, Margot singled off a pitch that he would have probably taken otherwise, but Yandy Diaz had been rung up on it, that same exact pitch, the at-bat prior. So I guess good on Margot for keeping it out of the umpire's hands and just trying to put the ball in play. But other than that, like I said, the Rays staying steadfast in their ability to work walks and was a huge part of the 8 runs and a big part of the win, obviously, as well. So that's it for the offense. And then, obviously, now with the pitching, it was Luis Patino making his first career appearance against the Red Sox. And not just that, but it was a start in Fenway Park. So he had even admitted he was, looking forward to it. Some excitement, some pressure maybe as well. And not a terrible start at the end of the day. Ended up getting a no decision. And the Rays were actually trailing when he left the game 4-2. If you're wondering, his final line, 4 runs on 6 hits over 6 innings of work, so matches his career high in innings. 1 strikeout shy of his career high with 7, 3 walks, and 2 home runs allowed. So those last 2 that I mentioned are certainly the most glaring as far as where you'd like to see him improve and where he could have been a bit more cleaned up. One of the 3 walks was a 2-0 count to Rafael Devers. So on a 2-0 count, they just intentionally walked him, but obviously for good reason. It's still charged to the pitcher. In 36, or really now, because I forget that ESPN doesn't count the most recent start, and now about 43 innings pitched. Luis Patino has allowed 8 home runs, which is much more than you'd like. Dating back to spring training, Luis Patino was a guy that they had praised for his commitment to the strike zone, a guy that was really pounding the zone with strikes. And as we know with Michael Wacha, what comes with that is a lot of contact. Sometimes it's going to be hard contact, and sometimes it is going to be taken out of the yard. And for Patino, that has been an issue. I've seen some liken his performance this year to a young Tyler Glasnow, and I think I even mentioned that myself previewing tonight's game on yesterday's program. He's got a nice big fastball, and it was big tonight. It took him a while to get it heated up, but that seems to be kind of the case for him. It was 93, 94 to start, but then was ramping it up 97, and then I know had a couple of 98s that was like right up and into the right-handed hitter. Which is an impossible pitch to hit. I know Glasnow has kind of mastered that one as well, but has pretty much just got the slider. He's got an occasional curveball that he'll throw, and he saved that kind of for the second time through the order. And I think another big part of this, I was trying to save the Joe West for this, was the slider. I don't think got a single swing and miss, and I don't know if they were all strikes. The idea of a slider down and away to a right-hander is that it's not really supposed to be in the strike zone, but there was a couple of borderline pitches there, sliders down and away to the right-hander, that none of them were called for strikes, and none of them were swung on a miss. So every time he went to any other pitch other than the fastball, it was basically a ball. So he was turned into tonight a one-pitch pitcher, and you get a guy that's throwing only fastballs and a guy that does them a lot in the zone in Fenway Park with the way that this lineup has been able to perform this year. You're not really thinking 4 runs over 6 innings. You're thinking like a Michael Wacha disaster start where he gives up like 8 runs in 3 innings. So I think for Patino, the second straight start that he's done this, been able to just gut out some innings and just kind of save the bullpen a little bit. I know they had a couple of off days within the last week, but that he went 6. You only had to use Kittredge for 2 and Lewis Head for 1. So you're in great shape tomorrow if you have to do a bit of a bullpen day, if you don't feel great about Fleming, and you're going to need some bulk innings probably on Thursday with Drew Rasmussen. I can't imagine going more than 3 or 4, maybe 5 if he works really efficiently, but with the base runners that Drew has allowed this year, that doesn't seem very likely. So I think Patino, he's only 21 years old, but I think his ceiling, he's going to be kind of that Blake Snell type where every 5th day it's bump day. He's taking them out and he's going to give you innings and hopefully keep you in the game, kind of like Shane McClanahan has been able to do. So I didn't think he would be able to go 6, and he did that in just 103 pitches, 60 of which were for strikes. The home runs, that's got to get fixed, and I think if the sliders had been chased more, if they had been called for strikes more, we would have been talking singing a bit of a different tune, not just with the home runs, but also the walk total, the 3 walks is a bit more than you'd like. But 6 hits over 6 innings, it's not terrible. The 4 runs, not great. But it was enough, I guess, to keep the Rays in it. It was 4-2 when he left. And so with the Rays coming back to win, factors into the game with a no decision. Andrew Kittredge getting his 8th win of the season. He's now 8-1, 2 shutout innings. Gave up 3 hits over the course of those. Obviously working the 7th and the 8th. Had a couple of, 2 of the 3 hits were in the 7th. But they came out with 2 outs and the bases empty. And so with runners at the corners and 2 outs, what was a tie game in the 7th, against Rafael Devers, no less, righty on lefty. He gets him to fly out to center. And that one, I believe, took Margot all the way out to the triangle, which is about 400 feet out there. So at Tropicana Field, might have been a 3-run homer, and we're saying, oh man, Andrew Kittredge blew the game, the Rays lose. So one of those kind of quirks, and what makes baseball such a funny game is that in Fenway Park, that's a fly out, and had a pretty quick and easy 8th inning where he did allow a 1-out single, but all 3 of his other outs were swinging strikeouts. The velocity, I feel like we say this almost every time he's on the mound, but looked like some of his best stuff that he's had all year. 97, 98 on a sinker that has a lot of cut to it as well, and a slider at like 90, 91 that had tight break and a lot of swing and miss on it. 29 pitches, 26 for strikes, and he was 9 for 9 in establishing the first pitch strike. And I think, not everyone does have the stuff that Kittredge has right now, but I think a lot of relievers in the Rays pen could take some notes to that. And I think those numbers that I just listed off was a big part of Kittredge's success tonight. And in an 8-4 lead, so it's not a safe situation, but it's not necessarily garbage time either with having to face kind of the top of the order. Lewis Head closes it out in a quick inning, only 8 pitches. He almost gave up a home run to Franchy Cordero to start the inning, and then had a couple of pop-outs, including the final out, which fittingly enough was to Wander Franco in his Fenway Park debut. And as he's only 20 years old, we hope to maybe see maybe 10, 15 more years of him playing for the Rays in Fenway Park, hopefully in winning fashion. So a good Fenway debut for, I think, Patino and Franco. I think maybe they both, you could say, left some meat on the bone, but I think they also both came up, more so Franco when it really counted. But I thought Patino gave you a lot to like. I would say that my, which I guess is maybe weird to say, I'm not sure a lot of Rays fans would agree, but I think my view of Patino has actually improved after tonight's game. I saw a lot of stuff to like. He's got a nasty fastball when he really gets pumped up and is wanting to throw it. I think did a decent job of kind of working in and out of trouble. I know McClanahan kind of had the same thing on Saturday. They're both still learning how to keep their composure in some of those spots. But Patino's got some really true, pure stuff, and something that I probably should have talked about last night, but the catcher splits for Luis Patino, and I know with most of his starts he has had Mejia. Tonight it was Zunino. So let me actually refresh this because I think it'll be different, obviously, with the start tonight if it was factored in, and Baseball Reference has not taken it into account yet. But anyway, for heading into tonight's game, for Patino this season, 22 and a third innings pitched with Mejia catching him, a 5.24 ERA, which is not good by any means, well below average. And 14 and a third innings pitched with Mike Zunino catching him, a 3.14 ERA. So 5.24 with Mejia and 3.14 with Zunino. So an entire 2-run difference on the ERA with Zunino versus Mejia. I know McClanahan has kind of been the poster boy of this as well, but I think I didn't expect Zunino to start because he just hadn't started a lot of times for Patino, but I think maybe Cash is catching on a little bit, and as we brought up last night as well, in a raucous Boston crowd, you want a catcher that can kind of do a better job of keeping your pitcher composed and all those things. And I thought Zunino did a relatively good job. There's nothing you can do about not getting those sliders called for strikes, and Joe West was not helping them out at all. And I don't have a problem with that if you're going to keep it consistent for the other team, but it seemed like Eduardo Rodriguez was getting every borderline call, and including there was some, like the strikeout to Yandy Diaz where he went down looking in the 6th, where they had first and second first and second and one out, and it was a baseball inside to Diaz, and Joe West rings him up. So if you're going to give it to one team, give it to the other team, and they didn't do that. So that's what's frustrating about Joe West, is he was clearly the Red Sox were clearly benefiting from his calls more than the Rays were. Just because I brought it up, if you're curious, Shane McClanahan's split by catcher, 20 innings with Mejia, a 5.31 ERA, 63 innings with Zunino, a 3.25 ERA. So 5.31 with Mejia versus 3.25 with Zunino. A much different sample size with Zunino compared to Mejia, and I think just Cash figured out early on that McClanahan and Mejia are just not a good match. But I think McClanahan and Zunino are a terrific pairing, and the 3.25 ERA would be indicative of that. What was curious to me, you look at the staff as a whole, in about 400 innings with Mejia, Rays pitching has a 3.65 ERA, with almost 600 innings with Zunino catching him, a 3.59 ERA. So 3.65 versus 3.59, so basically no difference, which is, honestly, that's also amazing how those numbers are pretty much the same. So it seems to be just McClanahan, Patino, and there may be one other gem in there that we just haven't found yet that is better with Z. But I think Zunino should be catching McClanahan and Patino pretty much every time that those two guys come through the rotation, at least. That's what I believe. Excuse the dead air there. And that's pretty much it for tonight's game. Just quickly seeing if we have any notes from Topkin, any injuries or such from that. And we do have Fleming will start for the Rays tomorrow, so we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. But just to wrap up tonight's game, I know we talked about it ad nauseum, but another comeback win, the Rays 36th this season, that they're able to do it in Boston, a place where they got swept in early April, so kind of flipping the script on that. The Rays now lead the season series 6-4, and they now have a 5-game division lead over the Red Sox, who have now, I believe Boston is now 3-11 in their last 14, and I think they're now 1-9 maybe in their last 10, which is about as bad as it gets. Looking quickly in the Yankee game, if it is over, and they did lose to the Royals, so the Rays are 5 games up on the Red Sox, and they are 6.5 games up on the Yankees, or actually I believe that should be 7 games, and it is. So 5 games up on the Sox, 7 games up on the Yankees, so the Rays continuing to put them some distance between themselves and their American League East rivals. So still to come on the program. We'll take a short break. When we return, talk about some of the roster moves made heading into today's game and how that will impact the game tomorrow, and previewing tomorrow's contest as a whole. So some good stuff still to come. Again, number to call during the break, 877-566-1020. We'll be right back.
Hey Rays fans, William will be right back. We're in a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us internationally toll-free at 877-566-1020 or tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official. Also, we'd like you to stay tuned for William's other podcasting projects at speaker.com/user/WHBC.
HBC. And at 11:47 on this Thursday night, we are back on the home stretch of this Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show. Again, number to call, 877-566-1020. Some game notes that I had missed heading into tonight's game. The Rays were 13-5 in their last 18, and so now I guess you would say 14-4, and on a 9-1 stretch as well. And this season, the Rays are now 34-17 against the American League East. And as Dave Wills always likes to say, typically to win your division, you need to win your division, which means you win games against the other teams in your division. And the Rays have done a terrific job at that. Also, I missed the Rays' 7 Grand Slams, and I talked about that. I was like, that's got to be the team record, right? Well, the 7 Grand Slams that the Rays have hit this year are first in the American League, and the 7 is tied for a team record, which they hit 7 Grand Slams also in 2010, so the most that they've hit at least in the last 11 years. And with a month and a half, even more than that, a little bit left to play, you think they got to hit one more, right? Get the team record, the year of the salami in Tampa Bay. And also, heading into tonight's game, Wander Franco, who has been an absolute Red Sox killer so far this season. Heading into tonight's game, as I said, Franco 364 against the Sox with 6 extra base hits and 7 runs batted in. And tonight added another RBI and a hit and a walk, including in that final bases loaded in the 9th, where they were able to score those game-winning runs. So has continued to play very, very well against the Red Sox, and it carried into tonight's game in Fenway. We also talked, and also the Rays are now 16-7 since the All-Star break. The Sox are now 10-14 since the break, so they are really stumbling in the second half. The Yankees are 16-8, and I believe like 9-2 since the trade deadline. So after the series, it very may well could be the Yankees. If they're not in second place, they could be very close, and that'll be the team that the Rays will be having to keep off their heels for first in the division. But now, the transactions that were made going into today's game, Arozarena activated off the COVID IL, and also Lewis Head was recalled, so 2 moves being made. You got to send 2 guys down. DJ Johnson, who in Sunday's game said he felt something crack in his shoulder. He's put on the 10-day IL with what they call a right shoulder sprain. Kevin Cash said it was not a very good sign, that they don't feel great about his chances coming back, etc. So, I mean, a broken bone in your shoulder, like I said yesterday, I don't even know how you begin to come back from that as a big league pitcher, but we'll have to wait and see. So now it's just kind of Jordan Luplow that they have at their disposal out of that trade, where I was not aware of this. Peyton Battenfield is a top 20 prospect, I think, for the Rays. There's no way he's top 20 overall. I couldn't imagine that. So DJ Johnson no longer at the Rays' disposal, it looks like, for the foreseeable future. And Jordan Luplow, not a great game tonight. I figured he would have been sent down already, but I guess he'll be sent down when Yarbrough is coming back off the COVID IL, and Yarbs was the other move that was made. So DJ Johnson and Ryan Yarbrough down, Arozarena and Lewis Head up, and Yarbrough, which does surprise me, but it really does make sense, a team leading 119 innings pitched. So a guy not just this year, but also last year out of the starting rotation that was really carrying the team as far as innings pitched, and that could give you 5 to 6 comfortably every time he took the mound. Was not always necessarily going to be, scoreless outings, great outings by any means, but, would give you innings when you need them most. And so not having that guy in your rotation is going to hurt. Right now it looks like it'll be Drew Rasmussen taking Yarbrough's place in the rotation, and then after that you got McClanahan, Waka, Patino, and Josh Fleming, who will pitch tomorrow, and that leads us now into a preview of tomorrow's contest, a 7-10 start, game 2 of the series, with a chance for the Rays to take the best of 3. It'll be Josh Fleming going up against former Ray Nathan Eovaldi. This season, Josh Fleming, the 25-year-old left-hander, is 9-5 on the year with a .412 earned run average. Against Boston this year, in 5 innings of work, he's got a .540 earned run average, so that would be just the one start. Looking at that was on July 30th, so it was that Friday night and that weekend series at the Trop. 3 runs on 8 hits over 5 innings of work, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, 99 pitches. He worked out of a bases-loaded jam without giving up any runs, and so I think that was kind of the defining moment, but was allowing, again, 10 base runners over 5 innings. That's not great. The 7 strikeouts was a really high number for him. And just taking a quick peek, that was actually his season high in strikeouts, and I gotta believe is up there close to maybe a career high for him as well. So against a lot of good right-handers from the left side, was getting a lot of swing and miss, and I recall his stuff being pretty good on that night. I did have a good sinker and all that, so just try and limit the contact, but that's never really what he does. He is kind of a contact pitcher, so just hope your defense is playing good behind you. And his last time out overall, August 4th against the Mariners, where he did get a win, 2 runs on 5 hits over 5 innings of work, no walks, 6 strikeouts, just 75 pitches thrown. He was taken out because, a 4-3 game. It was the bullpen. They were playing matchups, but threw first pitch strike to almost everyone that he saw, and I think that'll be a good recipe for some success tomorrow. So he's going to get the outright start. He went 5 innings last time. You think maybe he goes 5 again? Kittredge is available, but I don't think they would want to use him, but certainly they could. But from the left side, they've got Ryan Sheriff, Dietrich Enns. Drew Rasmussen is obviously not going to be available. Colin McHugh could maybe go 1 or 2. I figured they would have actually been having him start ahead of Fleming, but instead they're not going to. And we actually do have a call now, so we're going to go ahead and go to the phones. And we do have a caller on now. We believe you're a first-time caller, so you're on the William Haynes Show. We're live. What can you say?
What's up, William? It's Dylan, Bucks Rays Bolts, man. I'm not a first-time caller.
Yeah, I knew I should have.
I think I called from some bogus free calling thing on my computer last time.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Dylan, it's good to be speaking with you tonight. What can you say?
Hey, man. I just want to say the Rays I think this is the most fun Rays team we've had to watch in a long time. I can't remember any other year where, like, every night, even when they go down 4-1, I feel like it's still worth watching till the end of the game.
Yeah, definitely.
It's probably the most prolific offense in Rays history, I would say.
Yeah, I think by season's end, they'll probably have the team record for runs scored. They do remind me a lot of the way they were at the end of the 2019 season, where the bullpen would it was not great off and on, but it seemed like the offense, night in and night out, was putting up a ton of runs. So you're right. I mean, it really is fun to watch. Yeah, man. Do you know what like their average runs per game is so far this year? I feel like it has to be like 5 or something. Yeah, 5.09. Something ridiculous. Yeah, so just over 5 runs a game, which is amazing. Yeah. Yeah, man, it's crazy. It's this is the most fun I've had watching the Rays, and aside from last year, I would say since I started watching full time in like 2013, 2014, this is the most fun season so far. Like, I haven't missed a single game yet. Well, that really is crazy, and I think a lot of Rays fans probably would agree with you, and it is really exciting that they were able to have that postseason run. Obviously, they came a couple games short, but they've got a lot of faces from that team, a lot of fun players that are fun to root for. Obviously, Brandon Lau, Arozarena, a lot of others among them. So I would certainly agree with your sentiment too. It's a really fun team. A rare division title. I think the Rays are well on their way to capturing, and hopefully it'll be another really, really fun postseason run with fans and games in the Trop too. I really am. I can't express my excitement enough for that. Oh yeah, man! All right. Well, have a good night, dude. I got to wake up at 8 in the morning, so I'm going to let you go, but I'll listen to the rest of the show as I fall asleep. All right, man. Thanks for the call, Dylan. Take care. All right, see ya. All right, and that was Dylan calling in, and I am remiss because he has called us before, and if you're not familiar with him, as he said, but he runs at Bucks Rays Bolts, YT on Twitter, and he posts, for all the Lightning games, he'll post the highlights with the radio calls. He does the same for the Bucks games, and he'll do occasionally for the Rays games as well. So a really, really cool thing to watch, and he puts a great resource out there, and it's just one of the really cool Tampa Bay sports fans on the online community. So Dylan, I know you said you're listening, so thanks again for the call, and thanks for listening in as well. And we thank all of our listeners tonight for tuning in to the William Haynes Show, and where we left off was with Josh Fleming, and as we said, maybe he goes 5 innings. You got Lewis Head could go on a back-to-back. Colin McHugh could be maybe available for 1 or 2. You've got the lefties, Enns and Sheriff out of the pen, and then kind of the middle relievers, or towards the back end, you'd say maybe Matt Whistler and JT Chigua. So with a lot of off days lately, and with the pen being used rather sparingly tonight, they're going to have a lot of guys available. And on the flip side, going against Josh Fleming will be Nathan Eovaldi. The 31-year-old right-hander is 9-7 this season with a 4.07 earned run average. So far against the Rays this year, in 12 1/3 innings pitched, he is pitching to a 4.38 earned run average and a 1-1 record. So that's a couple of starts that he's had. And looking at those, I know he pitched in that weekend series last weekend, and it was that Saturday night Devil Ray day where he went 5 1/3, giving up 6 runs on 6 hits, a couple of homers in the process, a walk, 6 strikeouts, 105 pitches thrown. He did also face the Rays very early on this season on April 7th. Went 7 innings, allowing just a run. But you would say with the Rays offense and the way they've been performing lately that the July 31st start, 6 runs over 5 1/3 would be more indicative. And he has not done much better in his most recent start. That was August 6th in Toronto against the Blue Jays. Gave up 7 runs on 8 hits over 4 2/3. Allowed a home run, 2 walks, and just 4 strikeouts on 86 pitches thrown. And I was watching the highlights of that game heading into the preview of this series just to see kind of the vibe of the Red Sox. And it seemed like double after double after double. A guy that, a big fastball does get a lot of swing and miss, it seems like. And the Blue Jays were hitting him around. The Blue Jays did score 12 runs total that day. I think some of that is a testament to the Blue Jays offense, but you would say his last 2 starts, Eovaldi has not been very good. Now, the start before the Rays one on July 24th against the Yankees, he gave up just 2 runs over 7 2/3, so perhaps maybe some lingering effects from that. I want to just look briefly back to that July 31st game to see, just give myself a refresher as to who was teeing off. Ji-Man Choi had a 2-run homer in the first inning after a Brandon Lau double, so you had to imagine both of those guys would be in the lineup. There was also a 2-run homer for Francisco Mejia, so maybe he is in the lineup to catch Josh Fleming and company. And there was also a RBI triple for Wander Franco in there as well. So a lot of extra base hits and guys teeing off on former Ray Nathan Eovaldi. So I imagine the lineup probably tomorrow, get all the lefties in there against the right-hander Eovaldi. So in the outfield, I would imagine you would keep probably Meadows in the lineup in left, Kiermaier in center, and I would go probably Randy in right. You can flip Randy and Meadows, but I would say with that kind of weird right field that I'd rather have Randy out there. And Nelson Cruz to DH, I would imagine. And then in the infield from third to first, I would go Wendell at third, Franco at shortstop, Lau at second, Choi at first, Frankie Mejia to catch because he hit the home run against him the last time. And as we said, Nelson Cruz to DH, because with the off day on Monday, I don't think there would be a reason to give him a day off unless you want matchups. And Cruz went 0 for 3 with a strikeout against him last time and did reach base via an error on the second baseman, Arauz, who I recall had like 2 errors in the same inning in that game. So what a wild ride that one was, that 9-5 win. So hopefully it'll be more of the same in that regard. So as always, we will be on the air following the game tomorrow as we now cross in at 12:01 to this early Wednesday morning. We put a wrap on the show. Want to thank everyone for tuning in as always. Want to thank Dylan, a.k.a. Bucks Rays Bolts, for tuning in, also giving us a call. That was pretty cool of you to do that and share some thoughts. I do agree this is an incredibly fun Rays team to watch, and I would say just about everyone else that calls himself a Rays fan would agree with you. So hopefully the Rays tomorrow, Josh Fleming on the mound and company, will be able to capture a win and a season victory. We'll be on the air no matter what happens, all that good stuff. And as always, we'll talk to you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC